Summer routines live or die by how easy they are, and honestly, if something takes too much effort, I'm out. That's why Groons is my go-to. It's my one daily pack of gummies covering my greens, vitamins, and minerals. Plus, it has 6 grams of prebiotic fiber, which is more than 2 cups of broccoli. No mixing powders, no giant pills, no hassle. I just rip open the pack and I'm done. They taste good and they make it easy to stay on top of my health, even when life gets busy. Save up to 52% with the code PODCAST at Groons.co. That's code PODCAST at GRUNS.co.
Welcome back to the Alec Lewis Show. I'm your host, Alec Lewis. This is episode 171, recording on Wednesday night. You guys will be hearing this, on Thursday, May 28th, after the first day that the media was present for voluntary OTAs. Really early in the calendar practice, as Kevin O'Connell would say. He calls this the teaching and learning phase. It is a slow type of practice that methodically eases its way toward training camp. But that does not mean I did have some thoughts watching Kyler Murray and J.J. McCarthy throw the football. And that's where we're going to begin. Not going to begin with the comments after practice that spread like wildfire pretty immediately. We'll touch on them in a bit, but I think it's important to focus on the primary task at hand, which would be the quarterback and who will be playing quarterback for the Vikings in 2026. So that's where we will start. If you don't know me, my name's Alec Lewis. Cover the team every day for The Athletic, wearing the big hat on YouTube. If you're watching that, you can probably see that. And have stories pretty much every day. Had one from that posted on Wednesday night from what I saw at OTAs, the first practice of OTAs. And we do this show 2 times a week every week because it's a way for me to communicate directly with you guys, which I have absolutely loved getting to do now for almost 2 years. So thank you all to have helped build the show, build the platform. And if you're new here watching on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button. You get future videos. If you're listening, you can like, subscribe, follow, hit the stars, and we appreciate that. Show is presented by First Resource Bank. That is a member FDIC bank in the Minneapolis area, run by phenomenal people who are Vikings fans: Tim Siegley, Aaron Siegley, Charlie Anderson. They built the best online banking platform that I've gotten to use since I moved up here, and they really care about those who bank with them and the community writ large. So highly recommend First Resource. Show is also sponsored by Pro MN Athletics. I saw that they are having an upcoming event, essentially, with Tanner Morgan, the former Gophers quarterback, where if you have a son who plays football or friends' kids who play football or play quarterback specifically, and they want to learn from a guy who's as smart in terms of developing this stuff as there is here locally, highly recommend checking out that specific event with Tanner Morgan, which will be in the description. And then they've got 7-on-7 leagues in the summer, also academies throughout the spring, summer, and fall. So really good 3 dudes, Kurt, Graham, and Tanner. They wanted to help development for kids in football and kids in general here locally, and they've done a great job of it. So, yeah, like I said, we'll just run through some takeaways from what I saw myself with my own 4 eyes, you could probably say, at OTAs out at the TCO Performance Center. First day for the media was Wednesday. First day for actual practice was Tuesday for the Vikings. And again, obviously, J.J. McCarthy's comments about the relationship with Kyler Murray, that seems to be what everyone wants to talk about. But as we often do, both in writing and here, going to zag a little bit and just talk about what I think is most important, which is literally you guys asking me, how did J.J. look? How did Kyler Murray look? I would say this first and foremost. I probably entered most interested in identifying or observing Kyler Murray throughout the practice. I've never seen him up close. I've watched a lot of film of Kyler Murray. Even last week, I went back and I was watching some clips to regain a little bit of a feel as we headed into this week's practice. And so, I was just really curious. What does the ball look like coming off his hand? What does the size look like in person? Everyone wants to make jokes about it. I kind of just want to see through all of it, all of the noise, and for myself, have an opinion to watch, Kyler side by side against a guy who I know very well in terms of how he throws the football in J.J. McCarthy, and a guy in Carson Wentz who I got to see throw the football a lot last year as well. There was a very clear and early on recognition, I guess you could say, for me, of just like, man, think about these three quarterbacks on the field and what it was like at this point last year. Sam Howell had just been acquired, and it was J.J. McCarthy, Sam Howell, Max Brosmer. Brett Rippon was also involved, and now you've got J.J. McCarthy, Kyler Murray, Carson Wentz, and Max Brosmer. So a clear dichotomy there. I'd say with Kyler, the thing that just jumped off the page is the arm talent. And when I say arm talent, I'm talking about the ability from a feel perspective to get the ball up and down into windows. And I could rattle off a bunch of examples. There are a ton of them in the story from Wednesday night at The Athletic, but there was like a high cross throw from the pocket to Dylan Bell, the undrafted receiver from Georgia, where he's angled toward, I'd say toward the left sideline, and Kyler, perfect ball over the top with feel and kind of in the bucket where Dylan Bell can not only just make the catch easily, but also has room to run after the catch, which has been a priority for this team in recent years of improving their run after the catch kind of ability. And so, that was a really good one. Probably the most impressive one, Brian Flores, there was this whole sequence at practice, and I'll kind of walk you guys through it because you don't get to be there. So the opportunity for me to kind of bring you in, I think is the fun part of this show. But there was a Brian Flores look where he walked up both linebackers. So you've got you've got Ivan Pace. We're running on fumes here. Ivan Pace and Eric Wilson are in the A-gaps, which is right next to the center, and they look like it's the classic, what you guys have seen a million times, where all the guys are on the line of scrimmage, and it looks like pump block, and the quarterback has to sift through protection. So who's coming, who's dropping, how do I identify the protection, and then move within the pocket to make a throw? And there was a sequence where it looked like for one snap, the play got in late. It was kind of clunky. They had to kind of re-rack it. Then the next play, same look for Brian Flores, and it was identified. It looked to be pretty correct. We don't get the practice film, so it's hard to really say that with certainty. Then Kyler stepped up in the pocket. I don't know how really he saw Jordan Addison streaking down the right sideline, but he did, and he threw a hell of a pass down the right sideline. There were a bunch of in-breaking routes that were impressive. One to Jayshon Jones, former undrafted receiver. There was another one over the top to Devontae Fleming where it was just like it takes a level of lifting the ball up and down to get the ball into that spot, which was it's really impressive. And because of all of I think it's important to say this from my standpoint. You guys might wonder why I'm wading into this, but it's like I think it's important I don't pretend to be the foremost expert on quarterback play at all. Like, it is a very amateur perspective. I also think it's very important to note that this was one of, I think, 3 or 4 practices they're going to have this week, and I only see one of them. So the evaluation that I see and that then is funneled to you guys is a very minor snippet of what the overall team evaluation is going to be. I think that's really important to say. I also think it's important to say that when I talk about Kyler being able to lift the ball up and down and apply touch to passes, a lot of that is my observation over 4 years and listening and conversations with Kevin O'Connell and other people on the staff, on other people on other staffs, and how they talk about quarterback play. Listen to college coaches talk about it all the time. And it's an intensive study, I'd say, for me, knowing I have this job, to try to identify what I'm looking at, talk about it in the most optimal way. So those are the things that stood out with Kyler. The practice, and this is not a comparison, even though the throw down the right sideline to Jordan Addison did kind of remind me of one of Sam Darnold's first practices where he uncorked one over the top to Justin Jefferson. like the practice and the vibes for Kyler in this practice and kind of working with Kevin O'Connell a little bit, they felt a little bit similar to me to those introductory times that Sam Darnold had with Kevin O'Connell, where he's learning the offense system, they're going through the early stages. Again, that's not a direct comparison. It's not he's going to be this. It's none of that. It just had that kind of vibe to it of like, I remember watching Sam Darnold out on the TCO Performance Center practice field, and it wasn't perfect by any means, but there was a level of, man, he can get the ball up and down into spots, into certain areas that kind of just like evoked that in my mind today. There wasn't, as for the competition part of it, there wasn't anything definitive in terms of like, they took a similar amount of snaps, Kyler Murray and J.J. McCarthy did. They both mixed in with the first team offense that you would expect, an offensive line who you would expect. Like Kevin O'Connell was around both of them at times. The reactions to certain throws didn't differ much to me. Like both of them threw to Jordan Addison. There just wasn't like a clear, I'd say, vision or way to identify like this is how they're propping up this player to be the number one and this guy's the number two. Now I will say this, and I wrote this for Wednesday, and it was really the point. The point I want to make in the story. Like, there's no doubt to me who is favored within this competition. It's one guy who started 87 games, thrown for 3,500 yards 4 times, and has a 120 to 60 touchdown to interception ratio. And then another guy started 10 games and performed well or better, at least during the back half of last season, but just doesn't have the experience. And I understand if you guys listen to that and it's like, that's not fair, it's not a true competition, or they didn't give they didn't give JJ enough runway, or they haven't given him enough runway. Like, I get all those perspectives, and I'm not going to, like, I don't want anybody to, I think what you guys' opinions matter, and it's important for me to listen. I will say this, because I've talked about Kyler and his performance today. I thought JJ looked really consistent. I thought the mechanics looked as smooth as I can remember in a long time. I mean, I'm worried that something's going to get aggregated like crazy, but I would say that his throwing and performance and just consistency in some ways today reminded me a little bit of what it looked like kind of right before he tore his meniscus in that first training camp. And that's not to say anything other than I just thought the ball placement was better. The zip on his passes was still there. I still want to see more out-breaking routes and what that looks like when he's throwing towards the sideline, especially to the left. I want to see, can he get the ball up and down more? But, I mean, like, I'm not one-sided enough to think that, like, there was a drill that they did early in the practice where Kevin O'Connell's standing, like, on the second layer of the defense with his hand up, and all the quarterbacks have to get the ball up and down over Kevin O'Connell's 6'5", Wembanyama length wingspan, and he was able to do that. J.J. McCarthy was, which is important, and it's important to mention from my standpoint. So, I'd say there was a deep ball that J.J. threw down the left sideline of Jordan Addison that, again, it's the eye of the beholder, as is so much with this stuff. Like, was it underthrown? Did the wind catch it? Did Jordan Addison make a great did he track it well? And that was the only reason it was caught. There was another throw J.J. McCarthy had deep down the middle of the field to Ty Felton where it looked like a hell of a catch. And I think you'd hope, again, this is where it's tough and it gets into gray area and you're opinion-y and people have different feelings about it. But, I think you'd hope that ball would be in stride and that it would be in touchdown. Ty Felton instead had to make a diving catch. And again, some of that might be Ty Feltman's landmark as opposed to JJ's throw. Like, there's a lot of variables to it. And so I think being definitive one way or another is just, it's probably not the best recipe for me to look at this thing as clear-eyed as possible. And again, I say all of that. And again, I did right. Like, the whole competition feels very manufactured to me. And when I say that, like, I think some positions, when it's like these guys are really compete for a spot, like, you can understand, it's very easy to understand why that competition exists. I think this one, it's more of, you know, to have a competition spurs development for all and consistency on all parties, which means it's less kind of feels to me just less like like what is the merit type of circumstance. It doesn't mean both guys don't have to prove it every day. It's just kind of where I'm at. I'll also touch on one more thing before I get to other takeaways. And I mean, hopefully this isn't going to be quarterback radio 2 times a week every week, but I do imagine, and you guys can confirm whether I'm right or not, it is the subject you're probably most curious about. I've seen a lot of people. I've had friends ask me about the video with Kyler Murray and his leg kick, and the comment was essentially like, are you going to talk about or you guys, whatever, writ large media, are going to talk about the leg kick as much as you did with J.J. McCarthy? I think the way to clear that up is the conversation was never really about the leg kick. It might have become that in certain areas of social media. But fundamentally, I think if you look at film of Patrick Mahomes, if you look at film of Jordan Love, a lot of guys, you will see kind of that leg kick around. If you don't know what I'm talking about, imagine like an outfielder crow hopping and then that back leg swinging through at the end. You will see that with some of the best throwers in the NFL. Some of them can overcome it. And it's kind of an over-rotation thing, can overcome it with touch and feel, which typically, and this is where you wade into another gray area of like, can that be taught? Is that innate? I've asked a lot of those questions to a lot of people and you get different answers, but some guys can compensate for it. And the harder time you have compensating for some of the feel and the arm talent, the more consistent your mechanics have to be. And more than anything, more than the leg kick, the issue that the Vikings had last year with J.J. McCarthy was the consistency in terms of the tempo of his drops and the consistency and length of his drops, because those correlate directly with the timing of the routes and the timing of the play. And so being correctly timed with your drop and ensuring that is correctly timed with routes is literally, I mean, I'd say it's fundamentally the backbone of what this system is and wants to be. So wanted to clear that up for folks. You might be like, what am I talking about? You might be on social media and it's been the thing you're curious about most, but I've seen it. So I wanted to go there and try to explain that in the best way possible. So yeah, that's kind of the broad performance takeaway from the first day that I was out there presently for OTA. So if you got questions on it, throw them in the comment section. Toss them at me on social media at Alec_Lewis, at Alec Lewis Show for the feeds of the show. I try to get to as many as possible. I try to be as fact-based and just down the middle as I possibly can in an era where it's extremely hard when you're covering this stuff. Yeah, appreciate any feedback that you guys have on that. I imagine you guys probably want to know, just what I thought about the comments, J.J. McCarthy and the relationship with Kyler Murray, et cetera. And I'll just read them in case you fortunately haven't spent time on social media and seen the many opinions on all sides. But J.J. McCarthy was asked about the relationship, said it's just like 2 guys in the classroom. He sits on one side and I sit on the other side. It's the coach's responsibility to teach us and coach us. Kyler then was later asked about the relationship, and Kyler said it's been great. Obviously, he's a younger guy, so any way I can help him. I feel like I played 7 years going on 8. I'm considered a veteran, even though I don't see myself that. Giving him any knowledge he needs. Said that he was, overly always asking questions, etc. So 2 stark comments. The JJ one obviously earned a reaction, which is typical for when he talks to the media. I guess my thought on it is on one hand, like, what did I expect J.J. McCarthy to say? That they're best friends and they have plans to go to the state fair and get Martha's cookies together, like at Sweet Martha's? Like, that's definitely not the expectation. There was part of me in the moment that thought, and in the aftermath, just thinking through it, like, it's probably the best thing for him just to say, looking forward to competing with him and not, wade into the classroom type of situation. But yeah, I mean, look, I think one thing with J.J. McCarthy is when he's talked to the media in the past, since he's been here, is like, he's not afraid to kind of say what's on his mind. You appreciate that when you do this job. But I've said in writing many times and stand by it every single time. And this goes all the way back to the Aaron Rodgers conversation that obviously became so polarizing, but there's definitely been a level of consistency, discipline, maturity that part of the reason this quarterback competition exists is a byproduct of some of that stuff. And so anything that would potentially, and I don't know if this it has or will, and it might not at all, anything that could trigger that some of those things might still exist, that just probably want to stay away from it. J.J. McCarthy talked throughout the entire press conference about wanting to, prove it all in the field and do what he has to do. And I just say, on one hand, it's like, then you probably refrain from these types of comments. But again, it's also because of the position he's in, the comments probably spread like they do. So it's a tough one. It certainly is, for sure. And it's why I spent 21 minutes talking about the performance and the on-field stuff. But, I thought Kyler Murray in his conversations, it was more canned. It was kind of more what you'd expect from like the starting quarterback to say in a situation like this. But the disposition of both guys was interesting to me too. Like JJ seemed a little more just kind of on edge, I would say, or intense about it all. And Kyler seemed very relaxed. And that could be like just a glimpse at their personalities. They just got off the practice field. How calculated is all this stuff? You can go back and forth and go in circles with all of it. And so for me, it's why parsing one comment in particular is a little probably not the smartest thing for me to do. I think more than anything, this just allows, it underscores that, like, for JJ to continue to prove to this staff what they want to see, it's going to be incumbent upon him to prove the level of consistency, discipline, and maturity every single day. If he does that, I do think he'll land in a spot that benefits him, in the short term or long term. So, that's what I'd say about it. I think, it's a lesson in the media environment of any comment is going to be perceived in the eye of the person who is perceiving it and how they want to perceive it. It's just kind of how it is. That's not something that's probably going to get a lot of, takes. It's probably not, but that's just kind of, it is what it is. So I do think it's interesting enough. I mean, part of the reason it's on social media is because it is interesting. You've got two guys at these fascinating points in their career, 2 first-round picks, 2 guys with expectations, 2 guys who were really accomplished in college. What is it like now that they're in this quarterback room together at 2 stages of their career? Like, that is interesting. And so any comment on that is going to be relevant and interesting. And that's why it surfaced. So, that's what I've got to say about that. We're going to segue to the rest of my takeaways from OTAs, because contrary to popular belief, there were other players out on the field besides the quarterback, and I want to talk about them. But first, want to give a word from one of our new sponsors, Great Clips. I am wearing a hat. You can't see my hair because I need an appointment at Great Clips. So I need the appointment. What am I going to do? I'm going to go to Great Clips website. I'm going to type in my zip code. I've got to fly home for an engagement party. They probably, I guarantee they've got a salon at Great Clips down in Alabama where I'm flying. So you type in the zip code, you get the salon. It makes it very easy to schedule an appointment. Then you give them any type of idea on what haircut you want, and they'll make it happen. They also have products, shampoo, conditioner, clay, gel to make your hair look much better than I promise mine would look even with that stuff. So please check out Great Clips. We appreciate their support. All right, the rest of the takeaways, and I'm going to do something here where I'm just going to run down the depth chart and go through some interesting kind of observations / whatever thought bubble comes to my mind as I unload the notebook, as the ink-stained wretches long ago would say. So, as far as the other quarterbacks, like I saw Carson Wentz and Max Brosmer took a couple snaps in some of the team periods. Not many, not nearly compared to Kyler and J.J. Warming up, Kyler threw to Carson Wentz, J.J. threw to Max Brosmer. Walking off the field, Kyler and Carson were kind of going through some certain drops together, which was cool. I mean, it's a lot of experience among those two guys, so cool to see. Nothing really stood out among those guys. Aaron Jones looked like he was in great shape for sure. Saw him spring a couple runs. There was a lot of outside wide zone being run, and at different motions with fullback, motions into wide zone toss him, and it felt like that was very much an emphasis from a run game perspective today. Damon Claiborne, I didn't see him a ton with the ball in his hands. I cannot wait just to watch his electricity, and there may or may not be a story later this week on him and his path, which I think is pretty inspirational in many ways. The receivers, Justin Jefferson was out there, didn't run a ton of routes. He was more in for spirit support, looked like his excited self. Ty Felton, I mentioned that over the middle downfield catch that he made on the J.J. McCarthy throw. It was a hell of a catch. That was really good to see from him. I said on the show earlier this week with John Ledyard, like one of the guys I'm looking forward to watching was Ty Felton, and it was a really good start for him, I thought, today. And I just, again, I know I said this, but I think it's easy to want, for you guys, understandably, to want guys who are drafted in the third round or fourth round or whatever to step in and be immediate guys. In the best case scenario, that obviously happens. But just because a guy like Ty Felton might not be one of the top 3 wide receivers doesn't mean he can't continue to develop, and that's not important. So it was a good start for him. I'd say Jordan Addison looked phenomenal. It reminded me a lot of last year training camp, where he was probably the best offensive player, and it didn't translate. Obviously, he missed the first few games with the suspension, but if he can maintain the performance, the ability, the intensity, I'd say, that you just felt from him, I think that would be really positive. And I talked to him after practice today. He was locked in. He was in good spirits. He mentioned he was working out in Dallas, and Kyler was down there, and they just got together. And I asked Jordan, like, what has he thought of Kyler just as a guy? And he said, I put this in the story. He's like, he's a vet man. He knows what he's doing. Really chill dude. Chill. Well, he used the word chill like 3 times, which it understandable. I mean, that's laid back. It is what it is. Jawan Jennings is massive, and it's probably almost like hipster Vikings analysis to imagine that he's going to play a huge role, but I just think he is. TJ Hockenson, watched him run some routes kind of pre-practice a little bit and looked very fluid. I thought that was I thought that was good to see. Christian Darrisaw was out there and active and looked like his usual self, which was, that I do think is one of the most important storylines for this Vikings team in 2026. Just his availability, his reliability, his production, all of it. Ryan Vandermark, the RFA that they acquired from Buffalo. That guy looks like the mountain in Game of Thrones is probably, if you've watched Game of Thrones, you know that reference. If you haven't, you're probably like, Alec, what the hell are you talking about? But he is cut out of stone, 6'7" and towering. So that got to me. Blake Brandel took most of the center snaps with the starting caliber group, which wasn't a surprise. And then Brian O'Neill was not dressed in uniform. He was out there, which did not surprise me. He is one of, if not the premier leader for this Vikings team. So wouldn't expect him to miss anything. And why he didn't participate, he didn't look hurt or anything. I've said, I think I reported months ago that at the Combine, he and his representatives had discussions about a potential new contract. So if and I don't know this, so please nobody steal it, or pluck it and post it somewhere. Like if that him not participating was to allow that process to work through to figure out a way to consummate a new contract, wouldn't surprise me. Defensive tackles. Let's see. Smith Vilbert, the undrafted guy they acquired out of North Carolina. I mean, from a frame perspective, I'd like to watch it closer. I'd be lying if I said I was focusing on the quarterbacks in depth and the defensive tackles today. But and there's a reason they signed that guy, and he caught my eye for sure. Caleb Banks did not participate in practice, not a surprise at all, but I did see him afterward going through some workouts and looked pretty, it was pretty intense, and I just think continued positive signs for him with probably the timeline more realistic near training camp. Edge rushers, Andrew Van Ginkel and Dallas Turner were both active. I got a lot of questions about Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins and could he transition a little bit to edge? I will say he looked more, and this is a lot of he looked, but I'm just giving you what the perception was because I was out there. He definitely seemed a little more, I don't want to say slimmed down because that makes him seem slight, but maybe more fluid, if that makes sense. And it's a question that I need to ask Kevin O'Connell, Brian Flores, people when we talk to those guys next week or what have you, just what the role for him might be. He was drafted as a pretty versatile guy and is still really young. So, I saw him having a conversation with Thad Bogardus, who coached the edge rushers. So we'll see there, but definitely one to watch as a young guy who probably didn't talk enough about. I don't know what the upside ultimately is, but he played last year and contributed at times and didn't look completely lost. And for a young guy in Brian Flores' system, that's not nothing. Blake Cashman was not out there. Definitely something else that need to ask about. I don't think it's anything major, but understandable probably that he wouldn't be out there. And then on the defensive back group, there were a lot of iterations of guys mixing in. There was a nickel package with three corners in there where you had James Pierre opposite Byron Murphy in the slot and Isaiah Rodgers. There were safety packages with Jay Ward near the line of scrimmage. There were safety packages with Jacoby Thomas in there. So there was a lot going on from that standpoint, and I looking forward to continuing to follow that group. My other big takeaway, and this was, probably through the first half of practice, I was just standing over near the offensive lineman. It's not something that was crazy strategic on my end, but it definitely felt, and I could be corrected, and I could get text from front office people, whoever, tomorrow, whenever, that I'm crazy for saying this, but it definitely felt like the intensity of an offensive line workout in late May was ratcheted up to a level that I just can't remember seeing in my time covering this team. That's just, it's partially not a surprise because I think that's part of what the Vikings knew they would be getting and having Keith Carter as the primary O-line coach. But the best way to describe it is I'm standing over there and they're working double teams, kind of outside zone, two guys working on a point of attack defender, and then one offensive lineman climbing up to the second level. And I'm hearing the best indication for me was I'm hearing huffs and puffs of guys really, there was just a lot of physicality going on over there. And that stood out to me. And again, it's just not a surprise. I think one of the ways this Vikings team feels like they can continue to elevate the run game is to practice it harder, to practice it with more intensity. And so that'll be another angle that I can't wait to just like follow and continue to watch and evaluate and observe over the next few weeks and months. So yeah, that'll do it for episode 171. If you're new here, again, appreciate you hanging out with us. We enjoy doing this 2 times a week. Available for questions all the time. We'll probably do a mailbag early next week. Hit the subscribe button on YouTube, rate us, follow us, give us stars on Apple, Spotify, iHeart, wherever you listen to your podcast. Support First Resource Bank. Please support Pro MN Athletics. If you have a kid who plays football or friends, kids who play football, please tell them about some of their academies and 7-on-7 leagues, etc. Great clips, their support, and Unreal, the clothing brand, which I mean, it's worn out. I'm in the wash because with all of it that I've been wearing recently. But thank you guys for being here, and we will talk to you very, very soon.